Hey guys, it is fall. Welcome to the forest, by the way. We're getting very, very close to winter, and I'm expecting snow any day. So I randomly opened in the Amplified Bible to Job 36, and it's very beautiful and comforting. Elihu, I hope I'm pronouncing that right because he's the main character in the whole chapter. Elihu proceeded and said, "Bear with me and wait a little longer, and I will show you, for I have something still to say on God's behalf. I will bring my knowledge from afar, and will ascribe righteousness to my Maker. For truly my words shall not be false. He who is perfect in knowledge is with you. Behold, God is mighty, and yet despises no one, nor regards anything as trivial. He is mighty in power of understanding and heart. He does not prolong the life of the wicked, but gives the needy and afflicted their right. He withdraws not his eyes from the righteous, the upright, in right standing with God, but he sets them forever, with kings upon the throne." He sets them forever, with kings upon the throne, and they are exalted. And if they are bound in fetters of adversity, and held by cords of affliction, then he shows to them the true character of their deeds and their transgressions, that they have acted arrogantly with presumption and self-sufficiency. He also opens their ears to instruction and discipline, and commands that they return from iniquity. If they obey and serve him, they shall spend their days in prosperity, and their years in pleasantness and joy. But if they obey not, they shall perish by the sword of God's destructive judgments, and they shall die in ignorance of true knowledge. But the godless and profane in heart heap up anger at the divine discipline. That's a cool phrase. It's the divine discipline. But the godless and profane in heart heap up anger at the divine discipline. They do not cry to him when he binds them with cords of affliction. They die in youth, and their life perishes among the unclean, those who are sodomites. He delivers the afflicted in their affliction, and opens their ears to his voice in adversity. Indeed, God would have allured you out of the mouth of distress into a broad place where there is no situation of perplexity or provision, and that which would be set on your table would be full of fatness. But if you, Job, are filled with the judgment of the wicked, judgment and justice will keep hold on you. For let not wrath entice you into scorning chastisements, and let not greatness of the ransom, the suffering, if rightly endured, turn you aside. Let not the greatness of the ransom turn you aside. Will your cry be sufficient to keep you from distress, or will all the force of your strength do it? Desire not the night when people are cut off from their places. Take heed. Turn not to iniquity, for this, the iniquity of complaining against God, you have chosen, rather than submission in affliction. Behold, God exalts and does loftily in his power. Who is a ruler or teacher like him? Who has appointed God his way? Or who can say, you have done unrighteousness? Remember that by submission you magnify God's work, of which men have sung. All men have looked upon God's work. Man may behold it afar off. Behold, God is great, and we know him not. The number of his years is unsearchable. For he draws up the drops of water, which distill as rain from his vapor, which the skies pour down and drop abundantly upon the multitudes of mankind. Not only that, but can anyone understand the spreadings of the clouds, or the thunderings of his pavilion. Behold, he spreads his lightning against the dark clouds, and covers the roots of the sea. For by his clouds God executes judgment upon the peoples. He gives food in abundance. He covers his hands with the lightning, and commands it to strike the mark. His thunderings speak awesomely concerning him. The cattle are told of his coming storm. So I really liked the divine discipline that was put in brackets, but the discipline that comes with Christianity and believing what we believe, and that there is a good and there is a bad and there is a heaven and there is a hell, and the discipline that comes from putting aside worship of yourself and your own pride, your ego, your idols, being humble when you need to be humble, which is like always, being humble, committing yourself to spending time with God, praying. That is the divine discipline. At least that's what I thought of when I read it. But he might be talking about God's punishment on people is the divine discipline. So that was verse 13. But the godless and profane in heart heap up anger at the divine discipline. So that was 13. And then on 16, 17, it says, But if you, Job, are filled with the judgment of the wicked, judgment and justice will keep hold on you. So I like that, because how I interpret that is, if you are consumed with thinking about what other people are thinking of you, the judgment of the wicked, because we're all the wicked to a certain degree, but especially those who are not following God are, well, I don't know if we're wicked, we're sinful, but I don't think we're wicked. I had to switch to my other phone because mine is full. So the judgment of the wicked is the judgment of those who are not following God. And honestly, none of us are supposed to judge each other anyway. That's God's job to judge us. So if you're judging someone, you are doing something wicked. So if you are wrapped up in the judgment of humans, then what does it say? I have to look. It says, judgment and justice will keep hold on you. So when he's talking about justice, I'm thinking about justice that we try to serve to other people. The judgment of others upon us, and then the justice that we try to get for the anger that fills us up with, or justice for what, if we try to get justice as we deem it justice, not what God decides is justice, but we try to enact, seek out justice on those who we think deserve justice, then judgment and justice will keep hold on you. So try to avoid that. This is 18. For let not wrath entice you into scorning chastisements. So don't let your anger make you chastise or verbally attack other people. Desire not the night, when peoples are cut off from their places. How I'm taking that, don't wish ill upon other people. Don't wish for the night for other people. This is verse 21. Take heed, turn not to iniquity, for this, the iniquity of complaining against God, you have chosen rather than submission in affliction. There's a lot of power and beauty in submitting when you are afflicted. It's not easy to do, and I'm not great at it. I try to focus on trying to submit, but I'm not great at it. But there is a beauty in submitting to affliction. I mean, just look at the forest. I think you could say it is mildly afflicted. It is not in a prosperous time right now. It's cold, and all of its prosperity has fallen to the ground. In a not most beautiful way. But this is the affliction that the forest submits to, and it's necessary for the cycle of life and for beautiful things to happen. That is its nature. Okay, so here's a key in that. This is verse 24. Remember that by submission you magnify God's work, of which men have sung. When we submit, we magnify God's work, just like with the forest. When it submits, then come spring, it magnifies God's work. All men have looked upon God's work. Man may behold it from afar. Okay, and this has to be the most beautiful verses in the chapter. Verses 27, and maybe it goes into 28. For he draws up the drops of water which distill as rain from his vapor. He draws up the drops of water which distill as rain from his vapor. Verse 28. Which the skies pour down and drop abundantly upon the multitudes of mankind. Not only that, verse 29, not only that, but can anyone understand the spreadings of the clouds or the thunderings of his pavilion? Behold, he spreads his lightning against the dark clouds and covers the roots of the sea. For by his clouds God executes judgment upon the people, and he gives food in abundance. He covers his hands with the lightning and commands it to strike the mark. His thunderings speak awesomely concerning him. The cattle are told of his coming storm. So to me that says, with the rain comes beauty and comes judgment. With the command of the clouds and the thunder and the lightning, he's able to execute judgment on people by striking with lightning, and he's able to provide abundance for people with watering their crops. There's a lot to take in there, a lot of food for thought. To me it says, have respect and awe for the divine discipline. Don't complain but submit, and try to recognize the beauty in submission, that it's magnifying God's work, and that there's a reason for it, and we don't have to know the reason for submitting to our struggles if it's God's will. You know, you have to be in touch with God to know what's God's will and what's just man afflicting you. But in all things, submit to God and be prayerful and communicate with God, listen for God, try to find out if it's an affliction that he wants to pull you from or an affliction that he has put you in, like with Job. But submit to God, whatever you hear from God, whatever counsel you get from trustworthy Christians and from your praying. When you have recognized that something is God's will, submit to his will. And in your submission, work on magnifying God's name. And be humble and recognize that God does have the power to strike you down. He has the power to lift you up. He has the power to strike you down. He has the power to put you in affliction and the power to take you out of affliction and to give you a fat meal, as it says. He has control over everything, and you just have to, an easy way to achieve humility is when you realize that he does have all that power, that you can't just act like you the boss, and that he can't just smite you with one little twitch of his eyelash, which doesn't make a lot of sense because your eyelashes can't move independently. But anyway without thinking of it. If he wanted to, he could just, you know. And the beauty of it, you know, what makes that not terrible is that the beauty of it is he loves you bigger than you can imagine. And he wants you to come to him and not go away from him. So his agenda, his plan for you and for everybody is that you are humble, that you have a relationship with him. Really, oh, gotta switch arms. Oh, his goal is for you to have a relationship with him. That is the whole big deal. But showing it in that context of him having control over the waters and his vapor. How do they say it? He draws up the drops of water, which distill as rain from his vapor. That's awesome. And that with that, he does whatever he wants with it. He makes the clouds, makes the thunder, makes the rain, makes the lightning. And I don't know if this is how it was meant, but to me, what comes to mind is when it talks about the cows, is even the dumb cows know that he's coming. He is so big and in your face and no mistaking him that even the dumb cows know that he's coming. So, so know that he's coming, and know that you want to be someone with fat on your plate and whose crops God waters. And remember, it does say in verse 15, he delivers the afflicted in their affliction and opens their ears to his voice in adversity. Verse 5, God is mighty and yet despises no one, nor regards anything as trivial. He is mighty in power of understanding and heart. Verse 7, he withdraws not his eyes from the righteous, the upright in right standing with God, but he sets them forever, with kings upon the throne, and they are exalted. And then in verse 9 and 10 and 11 and 12, it talks about how he tries to turn people around from their transgressions. He tries to help them by correcting them and hoping that they will listen to his voice. And therefore, he hopes that when you are in affliction, if it's caused by him because he's correcting you for being a way that you're not supposed to be, then he hopes that you will submit and be humble. And therefore, submission to adversity, to affliction, brings beauty, because it brings that person back to God, brings you back to God, if that's where you're at. And in all affliction, we are supposed to turn to God. So every little affliction that we have, even throughout the day, we're supposed to turn to God with it. And that brings us closer to him and more in relationship with him. And that's what he's after. And if we recognized how good that relationship is, that's what we all would be after as well. And hopefully we are. Hopefully you are. Hopefully I am. It's so easy to be distracted by the many, many, many things in this world. But don't be dumber than the cows. Be at least as smart as the cows. And recognize that God is there, that there's moisture in the air, as his vapors. Is that what it says? I have to keep looking. Distill as rain from his vapor. The drops of water distill as rain from his vapor. And be as smart as the cows and recognize that the water cometh, be it in a good way or a bad way. Bye, guys.